For 3 years, I believed I was the luckiest man alive. Not because I had a perfect life. I didn't. There were years when everything seemed to fall apart. My career struggled. My confidence disappeared. I questioned whether I was good enough to build the future I dreamed about. Then Sophia came into my life. She wasn't the kind of person who made promises she couldn't keep. At least, that's what I believed. She was patient, kind, always there when I needed someone. When I failed, she reminded me that failure was temporary. When I doubted myself, she reminded me of my strengths. She never tried to change me. She made me believe I was already enough. That's why, when I finally proposed, I was certain I was choosing the right person. I still remember that night. We were sitting on a quiet hill outside the city, watching the lights below us. My hands were shaking when I opened the small box. Sophia. She looked at me and immediately covered her mouth. I laughed nervously. I haven't even asked yet. Tears filled her eyes. Yes. I smiled. You didn't let me finish. She laughed through her tears. I know the answer. That moment felt perfect. She hugged me tightly. I've waited for this. I believed those words. I believed everything about us was real. The wedding planning began immediately. Everyone around us was excited. My family loved Sophia. My friends respected her. Even Ryan, who rarely trusted anyone quickly, admitted she was different. She's good for you. I smiled. That's your way of saying you like her? He shrugged. Don't get used to it. I laughed. But as the wedding approached, small things started changing. At first, I ignored them. I told myself every bride became nervous before marriage. Every person had fears. Every relationship had unanswered questions. But some things bothered me. When I asked about her hometown, she quickly changed the subject. When I mentioned meeting some of her old friends, she became uncomfortable. Maybe after the wedding. She would say, "Why after?" I asked once. She smiled. It's complicated. That answer stayed in my mind. Complicated. A word people use when they don't want to explain the truth. Another time, I found an old photograph while helping her organize wedding documents. She quickly took it from my hand. Who is that? I asked. She looked at the picture for a moment. Someone from my past. Her tone made it clear the conversation was over. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to understand. But I trusted her. That was my biggest mistake. I convinced myself that love meant giving someone space. I convinced myself that trust meant not questioning the person you loved. A week before the wedding, Ryan noticed my hesitation. Something's wrong. I looked at him. Why do you think that? Because every time you talk about Sophia lately, you sound like you're trying to convince yourself. His words bothered me. You're wrong. Maybe I said it too quickly. Ryan didn't argue. He just looked at me. I hope I am. The wedding day arrived. And despite all my doubts, the moment I saw Sophia walking down the aisle, everything disappeared. She looked beautiful. The sunlight entered through the church windows. Everyone stood and smiled. For a few seconds, I forgot every unanswered question. She reached the altar. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I love you. I smiled. I love you too. The priest began speaking. The room felt peaceful until the doors suddenly opened. Everyone turned. A man stood at the entrance. He looked exhausted, angry, and completely certain he belonged there. His eyes locked onto Sophia. Then he spoke the words that changed my entire life. Are you really going to marry him without telling him that you're already my wife? The man's words didn't make sense. For a moment, nobody reacted. It was as if the entire room needed time to understand what he had just said. Already my wife. Those 4 words echoed in my mind. I looked at Sophia. Her face had lost all color. The smile she wore moments ago disappeared completely. Sophia. My voice sounded different. Uncertain. Afraid. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The man slowly walked closer. People moved aside as he passed. My family stared at me. Her family stared at her. Everyone was waiting for an explanation. The priest looked confused. Young man, this is a wedding ceremony. What exactly are you claiming? The stranger stopped a few feet away from the altar. My name is Daniel. He looked directly at Sophia. And I am not making a claim. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a document. I'm telling the truth. My hands became cold. Sophia finally spoke. Daniel, please. Her voice was barely a whisper. That was the moment I knew. Not because of his words. Because of hers. She knew him. I turned toward her. Who is he? Silence. That silence hurt more than any answer. Daniel looked at me. She never told you. I stared at Sophia. Tell me he is lying. She looked away. That was enough. My heart sank. The woman I trusted more than anyone in the world had been hiding something from me. The priest stepped back. Guests began whispering. My mother covered her mouth. Ryan immediately moved closer to me. Ethan, I raised my hand. I didn't want anyone protecting me. I needed the truth. Sophia. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I can explain. I almost laughed. Explain? How could someone explain something like this? You were married? She closed her eyes. Yes. The room exploded with whispers. My entire world became silent. I couldn't hear anyone except her. When? I asked. Before I met you. I looked at Daniel. And you? He nodded. We were married 3 years ago. 3 years. The exact amount of time Sophia and I had been together. My mind struggled to process it. You were my wife while you were building a life with me. Daniel looked away. I didn't know about you. That surprised me. I looked at him. You didn't know? He shook his head. Not until recently. Sophia stepped forward. Ethan, please listen. I looked at her. Why? Her tears fell. Because I was scared. Scared of what? She couldn't answer immediately. Of losing you. The words hurt. Because she had already lost my trust. I stepped away from the altar. The wedding decorations suddenly looked meaningless. The flowers, the music, the guests, everything we planned. It was all built on a truth she never gave me. Daniel looked at Sophia. You should have told him. She whispered. I know. For the first time that day, I saw regret on her face. But regret couldn't erase reality. I looked at the ring on my finger. The same ring I had chosen because I believed I was promising forever. Slowly, I removed it. Sophia reached toward me. Ethan, please. I looked at her. I spent 3 years loving someone I thought I knew. My voice broke slightly. But I don't know you anymore. Nobody spoke. I placed the ring in my hand. Then I walked away from the altar. Behind me, the woman I planned to marry stood frozen. And in front of me was a future I never imagined. Because the day I thought would become the beginning of my life became the day I discovered the biggest secret she had ever hidden. I stood outside the church, unable to move. The wedding I had imagined for months had ended in a few minutes. The flowers were still there. The chairs were still arranged. The music was still playing quietly in the background. But everything felt completely different. Ryan stood beside me, his face filled with anger. Ethan, let's leave. I looked back toward the entrance. No. He stared at me. What do you mean, no? I need answers. Ryan shook his head. You don't owe anyone that. Maybe he was right, but I couldn't walk away. Not yet. Not without understanding how the woman I loved could hide something so important. A few minutes later, I returned inside. The atmosphere had changed. Guests were no longer celebrating. They were watching, whispering, judging. Sophia stood near the altar with tears on her face. Daniel stood several feet away, holding a folder. The same folder that had destroyed everything. He looked at me. Ethan. I didn't respond. He opened the folder and removed several documents. I know this is difficult. I looked at the papers. What are those? Proof. My stomach tightened. Proof of what? He placed the documents on a nearby table. That Sophia and I were legally married. The words still felt impossible. I picked up the papers. My eyes moved across the page. Names, dates, signatures. Everything looked official. Everything looked real. I looked at Sophia. Tell me he's lying. The room became silent. I waited. A second passed. Then another. But Sophia said nothing. That silence hurt more than Daniel's words. Because a stranger could lie. But the person you loved was supposed to fight for the truth. Finally, she whispered, I was married before. I closed my eyes. Hearing her admit, it made everything real. Before me? She nodded. Yes. How long? She looked down. Years ago. I laughed quietly, but there was no happiness in it. Years ago. I repeated her words. You had an entire marriage in your past, and you never thought I deserved to know? Ethan, please listen. I looked at her. I am listening. My voice became colder. I've been listening since that man walked through the door. She started crying. It wasn't what you think. Then explain. She took a deep breath. I was young. I waited. I made mistakes. I looked at the documents. Marriage isn't a mistake you forget about. She looked hurt. I know. Do you? I asked. Because you weren't just hiding a person from your past. I pointed toward the papers. You were hiding a legal husband. Daniel looked uncomfortable. I never wanted this to happen. I turned toward him. Then why come today? He looked at Sophia. Because I found out she was getting married. Sophia lowered her head. Daniel continued. I didn't come here to ruin her happiness. He paused. I came because I discovered that her marriage to me was never officially ended. My heart sank. The situation was even more complicated than I imagined. Sophia wasn't hiding an old relationship. She was hiding an unfinished one. I looked at her. Why didn't you tell me? Her tears fell. Because I thought I could fix it. The answer made me angry. Fix it? She nodded. I thought the divorce would be completed before you ever knew. I stared at her. So you plan to marry me and tell me later? She couldn't answer. And that was the answer. At that moment, I realized the biggest problem wasn't her past. Everyone had a past. The problem was that she decided my future without giving me the truth. That I walked away from the table and took a deep breath. My mind was full of questions. Too many questions. I had spent 3 years believing Sophia was the most honest person in my life. Now I was standing in front of proof that she had hidden the biggest secret she had ever carried. Ryan came closer. Ethan. I looked at him. I know what you're thinking. He shook his head. No, you don't. He lowered his voice. You're trying to understand her because you love her. I stayed silent. But don't forget what happened. I looked back at Sophia. She was still standing near the altar, the place where we were supposed to promise forever. Instead, we were discovering how many things have been hidden. I need to talk to her. Ryan sighed. Are you sure? No, I answered honestly. But I need to. Everyone slowly left the church until only a few people remained. My parents, Ryan, Sophia, and Daniel. I asked Sophia to explain everything. She sat down, looking exhausted. I met Daniel when I was very young. I listened. We rushed into marriage because we thought love was enough. Daniel looked away. Sophia continued. But we were wrong. What happened? We changed. She wiped her tears. The relationship ended emotionally long before we admitted it. I looked at her. Then why wasn't the divorce finished? She took a breath. There were problems with the paperwork. What problems? She hesitated. Financial issues. Moving. Legal complications. I shook my head. Those are problems people solve when they want to. She looked hurt. I know. That was the first time she admitted it. She knew. She knew she had chosen silence. Why me, Sophia? Her eyes filled with tears. What? Why build a life with me while still being connected to him? She looked down. Because with you, I felt like I had a second chance. The answer should have made me feel special. Instead, it made me feel used. I was your second chance? No. She quickly shook her head. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She struggled to explain. You made me feel like the person I wanted to become. I looked away. Then why didn't you trust me with the truth? She had no answer. And that silence hurt. Daniel finally spoke. I should have handled this differently. I looked at him. He continued. I didn't know she planned to marry you until recently. You knew. He nodded. I found out about the wedding invitation. He looked at Sophia. At first, I thought she was trying to move on. He paused. Then I checked our records. The room became quiet. That's when I realized we were still legally married. I looked at him. So, you waited until the ceremony? He looked ashamed. I hoped she would tell you herself. Sophia closed her eyes. I was going to. I looked at her. When? She didn't answer. That question had no good answer. My family wanted me gone. My mother held my arm. Ethan, you don't have to stay here. Ryan nodded. She's right. Everyone expected me to leave. Maybe they were right. But something inside me refused. I needed the complete truth. Not because I wanted Sophia back. Not because I was ready to forgive. Because 3 years of my life had been built around a person I thought I understood. And now I needed to know if anything between us had ever been real. I looked at Sophia one final time. Tell me everything. She looked at me. Everything. I nodded. No more secrets. Her face changed. She understood. This was the only chance she had left. And if there were any more lies, there would be nothing to save. 3 days after the wedding that never happened, Sophia came to my apartment. I almost didn't open the door. When I saw her standing outside, holding herself together with tears in her eyes, a part of me wanted to turn away. Not because I hated her, because I didn't know how to look at her anymore. The woman standing in front of me was the same person I had loved for 3 years. But she was also the person who had hidden an entire marriage from me. Ethan, please. I stayed silent. I just need you to hear me. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I stepped aside. 10 minutes. She nodded. That's all I need. We sat across from each other in my living room. The same room where we had planned our future. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. Finally, Sophia spoke. Ethan, I know what I did was wrong. I looked at her. Do you? She closed her eyes. Yes. Then explain why. Her hands tightened together. Because I was afraid. I almost laughed. Afraid of what? Of losing you. The answer hurt. That doesn't make sense. She looked at me. I know. How could hiding the truth protect our relationship? She looked down. It couldn't. For the first time, she didn't try to defend herself. She simply admitted it. I made a terrible choice. I waited. Then she began telling me everything. Ethan was my first love. The name still felt strange. I met him when I was young. She smiled sadly. We thought we knew everything about life. I listened. We believed love was enough. She paused. But we were wrong. What happened? We fought constantly. Her voice became quieter. We were both stubborn. We hurt each other because we didn't know how to communicate. She looked at me. The marriage ended emotionally long before it ended legally. I leaned back. So you were both unhappy? Yes. Then why didn't you finish the divorce? She hesitated. I tried. The answer caught my attention. What do you mean? After we separated, I started the process. She looked away. But Ethan disappeared. Why? Because he was hurt. She swallowed. He believed leaving was easier than facing the failure of our marriage. I thought about the man who appeared at my wedding. He didn't seem like someone trying to destroy her. He seemed like someone carrying his own pain. So you waited? No. She shook her head. I moved on. She looked at me. Then I met you. I didn't say anything. When I met you, I felt like I had finally found the kind of love I always wanted. Her voice broke. You made me happy. I looked at her. Then why didn't you tell me? The question she had avoided from the beginning. The one that mattered most. She opened her mouth. But no words came out. I leaned forward. If you loved me, Sophia. I paused. Why didn't you trust me with the truth? Her eyes filled with tears. And for the first time since everything happened, she had no answer. Sophia looked down at her hands. The silence answered the question she couldn't. I want an explanation. A reason. Something that would make the pain easier to understand. But sometimes there is no explanation that can repair a broken trust. I thought you would leave. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I looked at her. So you decided for me. She nodded slowly. Yes. That honesty hurt more than another excuse would have. I spent 3 years believing I knew everything about you. I know. No, Sophia. I shook my head. You don't. She looked at me. I trusted you with my future. Her eyes filled with tears. And you didn't trust me with your past. She looked away. I was wrong. For the first time, I believed she truly understood. Not because she was crying. Because she stopped trying to make herself the victim. I don't expect you to forgive me. I stayed quiet. I don't even know if I deserve another chance. I looked toward the window. Outside, the world continued as if my life hadn't changed completely. After Sophia left, I spent the next few days trying to understand everything. I wasn't angry at her past. Everyone had one. I was hurt because she built a future with me while hiding a truth that affected both of us. A week later, I agreed to meet Ethan. We met at a quiet coffee shop. When he arrived, I noticed something immediately. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't angry. He looked tired, like someone who had been carrying pain for years. He sat across from me. I know you probably hate me. I shook my head. I don't know you enough to hate you. He gave a small smile. Fair. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I never wanted to ruin your wedding. Then why go? He looked down. Because I found out too late. About the marriage? He nodded. When I learned Sophia was getting married, I checked our records. He sighed. I thought the divorce was finished years ago. I studied him. Why wasn't it? Because I stopped fighting. His answer surprised me. He continued. I was hurt, angry, young. He looked out the window. I thought disappearing would make the pain go away. And did it? He smiled sadly. No. The honesty was unexpected. I spent years pretending I had moved on. He looked at me. But seeing her marry someone else made me realize I never actually dealt with anything. I understood that feeling. Because I'd been doing something similar. I wasn't over Sophia. I was just trying to forget her. So what did you want from that day? He thought for a moment. Closure. I looked at him. Not revenge. He shook his head. No. He paused. I wanted to know if our story was really over. The answer stayed with me. Because suddenly, the situation looked different. Sophia wasn't choosing between two men. Ethan wasn't trying to steal her back. I wasn't fighting against a past relationship. We were all dealing with something unfinished. 3 people connected by a truth that arrived years too late. Before we left, Ethan said something I didn't expect. Sophia made a mistake. I listened, but so did I. He looked serious. We both ran away instead of facing the truth. Those words followed me long after I left the cafe. Because maybe the biggest tragedy wasn't that Sophia had another husband. Maybe it was that 3 people had spent years believing they had moved on, when none of us truly had weeks past after the wedding disaster. But even though time moved forward, my mind remained stuck on that day. The moment Daniel walked through those doors. The moment Sophia's secret changed everything. The moment I realized the woman I planned to marry had a life I knew nothing about. At first, I thought the hardest part would be forgiving her. I was wrong. The hardest part was learning how to trust again. Sophia understood that. She didn't pressure me. She didn't ask me to pretend everything was normal. Instead, she started doing the one thing she should have done from the beginning. She told me the truth. Every question I asked, she answered. Every document I wanted to see, she showed me. The divorce records, the old messages, the timeline of everything that happened before we met. Nothing was hidden anymore. One evening, she placed a folder on my table. Everything is here. I looked at it. What is this? Everything about my past. I looked at her. You don't have to prove you had a life before me. She nodded. I know. Then why? Because I don't want you wondering what else I kept from you. That answer mattered. Not because it erased what happened, but because it showed she finally understood what had hurt me. A few days later, I met Ethan again. This time, the conversation felt different. There was less anger, more understanding. He looked at me and said, I owe you an apology. I didn't expect that. For what? For the way I entered your life. He looked down. I should have found a better way to tell the truth. I nodded. You surprised everyone. I know. He sighed. But seeing Sophia move on forced me to face something I had avoided for years. What? My own mistakes. That surprised me. He continued. I spent years blaming her. He paused. But I wasn't innocent. He admitted that he had walked away when their marriage started falling apart. He had chosen pride over communication, silence over honesty. And by the time he realized what he had lost, too much time had passed. I thought disappearing would make me stronger. He smiled sadly. It only made me more afraid. I understood, because fear was what had brought us all here. Sophia was afraid of losing me. Ethan was afraid of facing his failure. And I was afraid of loving someone who might hurt me again. But fear had already taken enough from us. The question was what happened next. One evening, Sophia and I sat together in the same park where we used to spend time before everything changed. She looked nervous. I need to ask you something. I looked at her. Okay. Her voice became softer. Do you still love me? The honest answer came immediately. Yes. Her eyes filled with emotion. But before she could speak, I continued. But love alone isn't enough anymore. She became quiet, because she knew I was right. Sophia looked at me quietly after I said those words. But love alone isn't enough anymore. For a moment, I thought she would become defensive. I expected excuses. I expected her to explain why things were complicated. But she didn't. She simply nodded. I know. That answer surprised me. You do. She looked down. Yes. She took a deep breath. Because I spent 3 years thinking love was enough to fix everything. She looked at me, but I was wrong. The honesty in her voice made me listen. Love didn't make my secret disappear. She continued. It didn't erase the fact that I hurt you. I stayed silent. That's why I don't want to ask you to forget. Her eyes met mine. I want to show you that I can become someone you trust again. Those words were different from the apologies I had heard before. They weren't asking for a quick forgiveness. They were accepting that forgiveness would take time. I don't know if I can go back to how things were. Sophia nodded. I don't want to go back. I looked at her. What? The people we were before this happened. She paused. They made mistakes. She gave a small smile. Maybe we shouldn't try to become them again. That thought stayed with me. Because she was right. The old Sophia trusted fear more than honesty. The old me believed love meant never questioning the person beside him. We couldn't return to those people. Maybe we weren't supposed to. Over the next few weeks, I watched Sophia change. Not with grand gestures. Not with dramatic promises. With small things. She told me when something bothered her. She answered difficult questions even when the answers were uncomfortable. She stopped hiding behind fear. One evening, we sat together at a restaurant. She looked nervous. What? I asked. She smiled slightly. You always notice. I've had practice. The smile disappeared from her face. I'm sorry. I reached across the table. Sophia. No. She shook her head. I need to say this. I waited. I spent years thinking my biggest mistake was marrying Ethan. She paused. But it wasn't. I looked at her. My biggest mistake was believing I had to hide the truth to keep someone. Her voice became emotional. I should have trusted you enough to let you choose. That sentence mattered, because she finally understood the part that hurt the most. The decision was taken away from me. She chose my future without asking me. I don't want to control what happens next. She continued. I just want the chance to be honest while we figure it out. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since the wedding. Peace. Not complete happiness. Not instant forgiveness. But peace. Because the truth was finally where it belonged. Between us. A few days later, Ethan contacted me. He asked if we could meet. When we sat down, he looked different. Calmer. I wanted to tell you something. I listened. When I saw Sophia with you, I was angry. He admitted. I thought she had replaced me. I nodded. But then I realized something. What? He looked at his coffee. She didn't replace me. He looked up. She moved forward. His words surprised me. And I needed to do the same. I respected him for that. Because letting go wasn't easy. Especially when someone had once been your entire world. I hope you both find happiness. I smiled. Thank you. As I walked away from that meeting, I realized something important. Everyone involved had made mistakes. Sophia hid the truth. Ethan ran away from his problems. I ignored the warning signs because I wanted to believe everything was perfect. Nobody was innocent. Nobody was completely guilty. We were all just people trying to fix the damage caused by choices we wish we had made differently. And now the choice was mine. I could let their mistakes control my future. Or I could decide what kind of future I wanted. For the first time since the wedding disaster, I knew the answer. I wasn't choosing Sophia because I was afraid to lose her. I was choosing carefully because I finally knew the truth. 6 months later, I stood in front of the same wedding venue where my life had completely changed. The same entrance. The same beautiful garden. The same place where I once believed I was beginning forever. But everything was different. The first time I came here, I arrived as a man who trusted without question. I left as someone who didn't know what was real anymore. This time, I arrived knowing exactly who stood beside me. Sophia. No secrets. No hidden documents. No unanswered questions. Just two people who had survived something that almost destroyed us. Ryan stood beside me, adjusting his suit. You realize this is probably the most complicated wedding I've ever attended. I smiled. That's comforting. He laughed. I'm serious. I know. He looked toward the venue. But I'm happy for you. I nodded. Thank you. Ryan had been there through everything. The heartbreak, the anger, the confusion. He was the person who told me to walk away when I was too hurt to think clearly. But he was also the person who reminded me that walking away and forgiving were two different choices. You sure about this? I looked at him. Yes. He smiled. Good. The ceremony began as the afternoon sunlight covered the garden. This time, when the doors opened, Sophia walked toward me. And unlike before, there was no fear in her eyes, only confidence. She reached me and smiled. I never thought I would get another chance to do this. I looked at her. Neither did I. She squeezed my hand. Thank you. For what? For asking questions instead of giving up. Her words stayed with me. Because that was the difference. The first time we stood here, we were pretending everything was perfect. This time, we knew it wasn't. But we also knew we were willing to work for it. Before we exchanged vows, Sophia turned toward everyone. She took a deep breath. I need to say something. The guests became quiet. I looked at her. She had never been afraid to speak before. But today was different. Today she was telling the truth in front of everyone. I made a mistake. Her voice was calm. I thought hiding the truth would protect the person I loved. She looked at me. But I learned that protecting someone from the truth is still a betrayal. Nobody moved. Sophia continued. I lost the trust of the person who meant the most to me because I was afraid honesty would make him leave. Her eyes became emotional. But hiding the truth almost destroyed the future I wanted. I felt my chest tighten, not because of the pain from the past, because of how much she had changed. The old Sophia would have explained. The new Sophia accepted responsibility. She didn't blame fear. She didn't blame circumstances. She simply admitted what she had done. And that mattered. Sophia looked at everyone gathered around us. My biggest mistake was believing love was something I could protect by hiding things. She paused. But real love doesn't need protection from the truth. Her eyes met mine. It needs courage. The garden remained silent. Then she turned back toward me. Ethan, I know I cannot erase what happened. I nodded. I know, but I promise you this. She took my hands. I will never make a decision about our future without you knowing the truth. Those words meant more than any romantic promise. Because after everything we had been through, honesty was the foundation we needed. Not perfection, not a fantasy. Truth. When it was my turn to speak, I looked at Sophia. 6 months earlier, I would have never imagined standing here. I thought the wedding disaster was the end of my story. I thought the woman I loved had destroyed everything. But life had shown me something different. Sometimes the thing that breaks you is also the thing that forces you to rebuild stronger. I used to believe trust meant never being hurt. I looked at the guests. But I was wrong. Everyone listened. Trust means knowing someone can hurt you, but choosing to believe they are willing to do better. I looked back at Sophia. We both made mistakes. Her eyes filled with tears, but we chose to face them. The ceremony continued, and when we finally exchanged rings, it felt different from the first time. The first ring represented a dream. This one represented a choice we were making with open eyes. After the vows, I noticed someone standing near the back. Ethan. He had come quietly. He wasn't there to interrupt. He wasn't there because of unfinished anger. He was there because he had finally accepted the past. After the ceremony, he approached us. Sophia smiled. I'm glad you came. He nodded. Me too. He looked at me. I owe you both something. I shook my head. You don't. He smiled. Maybe not. He looked at Sophia. But I spent years holding on to anger. He took a breath. And I realized anger was just another way of staying connected to something that was already over. Sophia looked emotional. I'm sorry. He nodded. I know. Then he looked at both of us. I hope you find what I couldn't. I smiled. Thank you. S. He shook my hand. This time, there was no competition, no resentment, just 3 people who finally understood the cost of avoiding the truth. That evening, as Sophia and I stood outside the venue, I looked back at the place where everything had fallen apart. The same walls, the same doors, the same path, but a completely different story. I still can't believe this is where we started again. Sophia smiled. We didn't start again. I looked at her. What do you mean? She leaned closer. We started honestly. I smiled. She was right. The first version of our relationship was built on love, but it was also built on something missing. The truth. Now we had both. And that changed everything. Looking back, I realized the man who walked into my wedding wasn't there to destroy my life. He exposed the part of my life that wasn't real. And because of that, I had the chance to build something better. A marriage without secrets. A love without fear. A future where honesty would always come first. Because sometimes the biggest interruption in your life isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's the moment your real story finally begins.